Okay, yeah, welcome to the presentation on delivering content to and from iOS with Contentful. Christian already told you about the two APIs, but just a quick overview how they differ. There's the Content Delivery API, which is read-only. It has a global CDN for caching, and this is the one you will ship in production apps to your customers. In contrast to that, the Content Management API is read-write. There's no caching, and it is for building internal tools for producing content. So you wouldn't ship that to customers because the amount of content is limited you can create, of course. So we're going to build a little example app today. We start with the CDA part, which will show a couple of bars on a map. You will be able to drill down to individual bars, and there are two ways of presentation for the bars. So let's get to Xcode. When you look at the project, the first thing you have to do is, of course, integrate the SDK. What I've done in this project is use CocoaPods for that. So you just specify that you want the delivery API and the management API. The :hat here means you get the latest version from Git instead of the latest released version. It's just something I need for the demo. In general, you should use the released version, of course. And there are a couple of libraries this project also uses. This one is used for uploading images to just some servers. There's this was just a progress HUD, which is used when something is happening on the server, and we have this one, which is for accessing the keychain in a bit of a more sane manner. We will be using the keychain to store some credentials for the management API. So now we look at the content model actually of our example, which has just one content type, which is called bars, and it has a lot of attributes actually, as you can see. For the app, we will show the name, of course. We will use a location to display it on the map, and we will also display in the details view the beer menu and the beer type served. Let's go back to Xcode, and there just a quick look at the general classes we have there. In the app delegate is the setup for a tab bar, which is 3 tabs. We will be looking at the first one now, the delivery tab. Then there's a second tab for the management API, which shows how we can create a new entry with the management API. And I have a third tab, which shows how we can upload an image. And this thing down here will also only be relevant for the management API. It's if we don't have a valid OAuth token yet, we will show a login. So there's a difference between the two APIs and how we authenticate with it. We better look at it here. So for the content delivery API, we have API keys. And the API key is used, is shipped in the app and is the same for everyone. You can have different API keys for different applications, so you can revoke them, but it's the same for all the people for one space. In contrast to that, the management API just has one key, which is the OAuth access token, and that is personalized to an account. So that's why we show a login for the management API. For the delivery API, we'll have the token actually built into the app. We have a little file with a couple of IDs we need and tokens. There's the access token. I just talked about for the delivery API. This one is a space key, which defines which space we're using. This one is also shown on the API key page right here. And then we have the content type ID, which is also important. If you have multiple content types with one, we could also just get all of them, but you find it here in the info section of the content type. And finally, one information I don't have spelled out here right now, which is the OAuth client ID. To use the OAuth API, you have to register a client with us, which can also be revoked separately. And this would be the client ID here. And you would use that for the OAuth authentication. This little thing here will be used throughout the app. It's just a helper category for dealing with views a bit better. So I said actually nothing to do with Contentful, but just to not be confused. I have defined some properties so that I can set X, Y coordinates and width and height of a view directly without additional path. So let's look into the delivery group. What we want to show is a map. For that, the SDK actually has a built-in simple component, which is the CDA map view controller. Let's have a look at that for a second. It's basically just a view controller showing a map view. So you can access the map view, for example, if you want to set the delegate. These properties are used to configure what the map view will display. We will see them again in a minute. We specify a CDA client, that is the object which is used to get all the content from the CDA, and also a query, which is the search query that is used. So in our implementation, first we of course have to specify the client, as we just need one client and it's always the same here. I basically have a little singleton inside of the map view controller, which gets initialized with our space key and our access token. And what we also do in the client is a feature for having your own custom class for an entry. That's this. We have our content type ID, which we defined earlier, and we specify a class here, which is this class, which has to derive from CDA entry, which is a class corresponding with one entry on Contentful. And it allows us to have our own logic attached to our entries, or just to abstract a bit from our data model on Contentful. In this example, I use it to actually get to the individual fields. As you can see here, you can access the fields of an entry with the fields via the fields dictionary, and then just the ID of the corresponding field. And for the image property, I do something special because there are actually multiple images in the content model, and I just want to display one, so just get the first one. So this is just a way to make it more convenient for you to deal with the entries, however it fits to your application. Another thing to note here is that by default, the fields property will give you the value for the default localization. And even through the whole example, we will just use one localization. But if you want to use multiple localizations, you can actually specify the locale on the entry. So if you would do this, from then on, all the field accesses will give you content in German, for example. So back to the map view controller. So we now know what this does and what our bar class contains. So in the initializer, we're configuring the CDA map view controller. The query, we just want all the entries of this content type we're interested in. For the coordinates, we want to use our location property, our location field. And for the title, we want to use the name of the bar. With this, it will already display the map, and we will get one map pin for each bar, and we have the titles actually attached to them, which we cannot see because I have also an action to attach to the bars. But this is just what the map viewer gives you as a convenience class. So what we now want to do, and what we already saw, was drill down into an individual bar. For that, we set the delegate to ourselves. We also have to specify, of course, that we are the mapkit delegate. And then we implement the did select annotation view class method. And what we have on each annotation on the map view is the identifier of the entry. So with this loop, we can find the corresponding entry for a map annotation, and then we display it. For this example, I have two ways to display it. One is, again, a convenience class built into the SDK, which is called the CDA fields view controller, and that just shows all the fields in a table. So we can look at that. So this just shows us the content of all the fields. So you can use that, for example, for just trying out the API in your application and how a very basic representation of it looks. And we can also, no, we cannot do that in this demo because I haven't implemented it. Anyway, that is the default component of the SDK, but we want, of course, to have our own custom view on it. For that, I have the class signal bar view controller. Let's look at that. It just has an initializer where it gets the actual entry. Inside, in the initializer, we just have something to make the display the same on iOS 6 and 7, because this demo already also still runs on iOS 6. We set the title, and the basic part of it is in the viewDidLoad method. We want to display an image to do with just an image view, and the SDK defines a convenience method for loading the image attached to an asset into an image view, which is called CDA underscore set image with asset. In this case, we use the CDA set image with asset placeholder image method. So the placeholder image will be displayed until the actual image gets loaded. But with this, we don't have to actually deal with fetching the image and displaying it asynchronously. It will be done automatically. This only works for assets which have an image though. So we have the if clause, which checks if the underlying asset is actually an image. If it's not, we're displaying a placeholder. Below that, we'll displaying a label for the beer types, and that will just have the content from contentful in between two beer emoji. And then we have a second label which shows the beer menu. So this is the view controller we now display when we tap on a map annotation. So let's take a look at that. So now we see the image. We see the beer selection. In this case, I just limited that to one line, so it's truncated in this case. And we have the beer menu description below that. So we can also look at a different bar, which is this one, which doesn't have an image. So we see the placeholder and, of course, the content of this entry. And we have the name of a bar as the title. So that's basically it. What you have to do is to show your content using the delivery API. It's pretty straightforward, I think.